the biggest discussions surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is not centered on a veteran star, but on the future of the quarterback room and the growing competition that could shape important roster decisions before the season even begins. During the latest Steelers mailbag discussion, several key topics emerged, but none generated more intrigue than the ongoing debate involving Drew Aller, Will Howard, and Mason Rudolph. According to the discussion, the Steelers clearly see potential in Drew Aller and are prepared to give him an opportunity to develop throughout this season before making larger judgments about his long-term future. Let's analyze everything. But first, be sure to click the like button and tell me in the comments. What do you think of Drew Aller? Should the Steelers give him more opportunities? I want to know your opinion. The conversation highlighted an important reality. While Mason Rudolph remains a familiar presence and provides what was described as a solid baseline for a backup quarterback, the spotlight may be shifting toward Will Howard and what he can prove during training camp and preseason action. The belief expressed was that Howard's future with the organization could depend heavily on how he performs over the coming months. If he demonstrates that he can operate at a level similar to Rudolph, while also showing continued growth and long-term upside, there is a scenario where the Steelers could view him as a legitimate QB2 option moving forward. That creates one of the most fascinating battles on the roster. The discussion pointed out that Drew Aller is expected to make the team, meaning Howard is essentially fighting to secure his place. Training camp practices and preseason performances were identified as critical evaluation periods. Every throw, every decision, and every opportunity could matter. If Howard performs well enough to earn trust, his position becomes much stronger. If not, the organization could simply stay with the reliability and familiarity that Rudolph provides. Another major topic centered on DK Metcalf and expectations for the upcoming season. The belief shared during the discussion was that Metcalf has a realistic chance of surpassing the 1,000-yard receiving mark and potentially pushing even higher. Last season, he reportedly finished around 850 receiving yards despite missing games, putting him on a pace that already suggested larger production was within reach. The reasoning behind the optimism is tied directly to the changes around him. The argument presented was that opposing defenses were able to dedicate significant attention to Metcalf because there were fewer receiving threats that demanded respect. This season, however, the receiving group appears deeper. Michael Pittman Jr., Jeremy Bernard, and Roman Wilson were all mentioned as players who could help create more balance within the offense. Wilson's move into the slot was specifically discussed as a development that could make him more comfortable and productive. If those pieces contribute effectively, defenses may no longer be able to focus so heavily on Metcalf, potentially opening the door for a much bigger statistical season. The quarterback conversation expanded further with comments regarding Aaron Rodgers. The assessment offered was balanced. While there was recognition that Rodgers is no longer viewed as an MVP-level player, there was also significant confidence in his remaining abilities. His football intelligence, mental processing, and arm talent were repeatedly emphasized as strengths that still allow him to function at a productive level. The belief expressed was that if the surrounding structure is strong enough, including quality play calling, capable receivers, and an effective running game, Rodgers can still generate solid production for the Steelers. At the same time, there was acknowledgement that Rodgers is operating differently at this stage of his career. The discussion suggested that he relies more on structure than improvisation now, making the quality of the supporting cast even more important. Despite ranking him somewhere around the 20th best quarterback in the league, the view presented was that the Steelers have assembled enough support around him to potentially elevate the offense into a stronger position than many expect. Attention then shifted to Joey Porter Jr. and the ongoing questions about a potential contract extension. Concern from fans was addressed directly. with the opinion being that there is little reason to panic at this stage. Even if a deal is not finalized immediately, the expectation discussed was that Porter would still be on the field for Pittsburgh. The possibility of continuing negotiations beyond the season was also mentioned, with confidence expressed that both sides could eventually find common ground. What stood out most was the praise for Porter's performance. He was described as a borderline top 10 cornerback overall and one of the best man-to-man defenders in football. Because of that evaluation, the expectation is that a substantial financial commitment would be justified. The belief shared was that Porter remains a crucial piece of the defense, and that an agreement before the season remains a realistic outcome. The discussion became even more interesting when the focus turned to identifying which player has the most to prove this season. Several names surfaced, illustrating just how many questions still surround this roster. Aaron Rodgers was mentioned because of the need to demonstrate he can still be an effective starting quarterback. Caleb Johnson and Will Howard were identified as players facing important evaluations during training camp. Coaches also entered the conversation, with questions raised about what Mike McCarthy can still bring as a head coach and offensive play caller, along with what Patrick Graham can accomplish leading the defense. Yet one name ultimately stood above the rest in that discussion: T.J. Watt. The reasoning was simple. When a player commands such a significant financial commitment, expectations naturally rise. The opinion presented was that Watt needs to deliver production that matches the resources invested in him. There was even a suggestion that another disappointing season could lead to difficult conversations in the future regarding his role and value. It was one of the strongest statements made throughout the entire mailbag and reflected just how much pressure exists on key figures entering the season. As the conversation continued, questions emerged regarding additional roster moves and whether major trades could still be coming before the season begins. The overall outlook suggested that the Steelers are largely set with their current roster construction. Instead of blockbuster moves, any additions would more likely come through affordable veteran signings. Several available names were mentioned as possibilities, but the broader message was that the team appears closer to finalizing its roster than dramatically reshaping it. With quarterback battles, expectations for DK Metcalf, confidence in Aaron Rodgers, contract discussions involving Joey Porter Jr., and major pressure on several players and coaches, there is no shortage of storylines surrounding Pittsburgh as preparations continue. The biggest question may be whether these individual developments can come together quickly enough to transform potential into results once the season arrives. Based on everything discussed, which storyline do you believe will have the biggest impact on the Steelers this season? The quarterback competition, DK Metcalf's expected breakout, Aaron Rodgers' performance, Joey Porter Jr.'s contract situation, or the pressure facing TJ Watt? The final portion of the discussion focused on the biggest question of all. Where exactly do the Steelers stand when it comes to competing for a championship this season? The answer was neither completely optimistic nor completely pessimistic. Instead, it was a realistic assessment of a team that appears to have a pathway toward becoming a serious contender, but only if several important pieces fall into place. The argument presented was that the Steelers currently belong more in the category of a Super Bowl hopeful rather than a true Super Bowl contender. There is a significant difference between those two labels. A hopeful is a team that can envision a route to contention. A contender is a team that has already proven it belongs among the elite. According to the discussion, Pittsburgh still has work to do before making that leap. A major factor in that evaluation comes back to the quarterback position. The belief shared was that if Aaron Rodgers is viewed as a quarterback outside the very top tier of the league at this point in his career, then the team around him has to compensate in several areas. The Steelers cannot simply rely on elite quarterback play carrying them through difficult playoff matchups. Instead, they need excellence across the roster. The first requirement mentioned was an effective running game. If Pittsburgh wants to maximize its offensive potential, balance becomes critical. The offense cannot become one-dimensional. Establishing a consistent rushing attack would not only help control games, but would also create more opportunities for Rodgers and the receiving corps to operate efficiently. The second requirement involves the receiving group. Throughout the discussion, there was repeated confidence that the collection of pass catchers is stronger than it was previously. However, talent on paper only matters if those players stay healthy and perform when opportunities arrive. The development of younger receivers was highlighted as particularly important. If those players take meaningful steps forward, the offense could become far more difficult to defend. Then comes perhaps the biggest factor of all: defense. The conversation made it clear that this unit carries enormous expectations entering the season. With the amount of talent and resources invested on that side of the ball, there is little room for excuses. The opinion expressed was that if Pittsburgh wants to make a legitimate run, the defense cannot simply be good. It needs to be elite. It may even need to rank among the very best units in football. The reasoning behind that belief is straightforward. The AFC is filled with high-level quarterbacks and explosive offenses. Every deep playoff run eventually requires victories against elite competition. If the Steelers hope to navigate that environment successfully, they need a defense capable of consistently winning those battles. That expectation places tremendous pressure on the entire defensive unit to perform at an exceptional level throughout the season. Another interesting point raised was that several younger players could ultimately determine how far this team goes. While much of the attention naturally falls on established stars, championship-caliber teams often receive unexpected contributions from developing talent. Training camp, preseason action, and early-season performances could reveal which players are prepared to take on larger responsibilities. Those developments may end up being just as important as the performances of the veterans. What makes the current situation fascinating is that there are multiple paths the season could take. If Rodgers performs efficiently, if Metcalf reaches another level statistically, if the younger receivers emerge, if Joey Porter Jr. continues ascending, and if the defense reaches elite status, Pittsburgh could find itself in a dramatically different conversation by the time January arrives. On the other hand, if several of those variables fail to develop as hoped, the ceiling becomes much lower. That uncertainty is what makes this upcoming season one of the most intriguing storylines surrounding the Steelers right now. There are reasons for optimism. There are also legitimate questions that remain unanswered. The coming months will determine which side wins out. Training camp battles, roster decisions, player development, and overall team chemistry will all play major roles in shaping the outcome. For now, the overall takeaway from the discussion is clear. The Steelers have an opportunity in front of them, but opportunity alone does not guarantee success. The roster still has important questions to answer. Several key players have significant pressure on their shoulders, and expectations remain high as preparations continue for the season ahead. Now I want to hear from you. Do you agree with this outlook on the Steelers? Which player do you believe has the most to prove this season, and how far do you think this team can go if everything breaks in the right direction? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest Steelers news and analysis. Also, be sure to click the video appearing on your screen right now for more Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. The fastest updates and the biggest Steelers stories are waiting for you there. Go Steelers!